Hello everybody, this is Bird Brain, where here we are nerdy for the birdies. So we are going on to week 3 of training camp, and we're going to use this episode of training camp observations to kind of recap preseason a little bit so far and recap the public practice. I'm recording this on Tuesday, so today I actually released my video of filming the public practice, all the first team offensive reps versus the first team defense, so that'll be interesting to see. I hope you guys enjoyed that. But anyway, so let's get into my observations, starting off with Thursday night's preseason game. I do want to quickly bring up, I don't think for the preseason I'm going to do a post-game ponder like I did last year. I think I'm just going to do the shorts after the game. You guys seem to prefer that anyway, so we'll just do that. And then once the regular season comes around, we'll do the post-game ponder proper. Anyway, so starting off with the preseason game, I want to talk about Tanner McKee's performance, because I think that's kind of been the big news buzzing outside of Philadelphia since that game. And I thought Tanner was excellent. I thought he played very, very well. But it's interesting that the reaction to the game is a lot of people are saying, like, oh, he's a top 20 quarterback. You know, if the Eagles traded him, he'd get a first-round pick. And let's pump the brakes on that one. I think Tanner was great, and I think for two reasons that the Eagles aren't and shouldn't trade him for a first-round pick. Number one, they're not going to, because they need a backup quarterback in their own right. And number two, no team's giving up a first. At best, you're getting a third if a team is, like, desperate, but it's going to be like a fourth or later. And because of that, Howie's not going to even entertain offers. But the fact is, Tanner McKee, in my opinion, has become this team's Nick Foles in a way. And I'm not saying Jalen's Carson Wentz, he's not. I'm just saying he's become that type of quarterback. You know, bigger guy, can kind of run the offense. It's like a little bit better than like a game manager type of quarterback. Like, he just turns it on and he knows exactly when to get going. Like, is he a guy that you can see starting a full season for a team? Probably not, but like, he's better than a backup, so it's like he'll be a pretty solid option to start. But yeah, I was very pleased with the way Tanner plays. He was poised, and we've seen this the last few years. I do just want to pump the brakes on it a little bit, mainly just because we have to remind ourselves that it's preseason, the defenses and the schemes are a lot more vanilla, so it's not like Tanner is doing the things that he would do on a typical NFL Sunday. But I thought he was really good, and I think that, you know, there's nothing wrong with acknowledging that. But the other big takeaway from the preseason game was the troubles with our CB2 competition. Both Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson got snaps. They played opposite each other, and they both did not have a great performance. They both gave up pretty much the same amount of catches. Ringo gave up a perfect passer rating. Adoree was slightly better, only because he didn't give up a touchdown. It was kind of disappointing to watch, honestly. And I've heard a lot of people talk about, like, Burrow and Chase, and everyone's like, well, you know, it's against backup corners anyway, like, it's preseason, who cares? Well, Keely Ringo and Adoree Jackson may potentially be starting opposite of Quinyon Mitchell, so those are technically starting corners, at least in the eyes of the Eagles. So you're playing a dangerous game with that. And will Keely Ringo match up with Jamar Chase every rep if it was a regular season game? No, but he has to be prepared for that, right? You look ahead to our schedule. You know, week 1, you get CeeDee Lamb and George Pickens. Week 2, you get the Chiefs, you get Xavier Worthy, and probably Hollywood Brown, because Rashee Rice might get suspended. We'll see what happens with him. You get the Rams, that's Devontae Adams and Puka Nacua, and then you get Mike Evans, Chris Godwin, and all the other good receivers they have down in Tampa. So you're playing a dangerous game with, like, the idea of a CB2 saying, like, well, he's not going to get the number 1. Yeah, well, you're going to get matched up against some pretty solid number 2s coming up. You know, I would say Marquise Brown / Rashee Rice, if he's available in that game, is the weakest of the group, but, like, he's not a slouch. You know, again, George Pickens can do some things to corners. We've seen him have some great plays. You know, Chris Godwin's a very good number 2 receiver. I mean, he's going to play more in the slot, so you'd see somebody like maybe a Buka or McMillan outside, or it may even just be Evans. that you might have to line up against at a time. You know, Devontae Adams and Puka can line up outside, so you have no idea which of the two you're going to face. So it won't just be as simple as telling Quinyon to go match up with someone. It might have to sometimes get these uncomfortable matchups, and I didn't think either played up to par. Now, let's not panic, but, you know, let's see what... I expect both will play Sunday, and let's be frank about the Browns receiving core. They're not as good as what the Bengals have, so if they look better, how much of that is them playing easier receivers in quotes, and how much of it is them actually improving. So we'll see. We have joint practices starting Wednesday, so I'll be uploading this on Wednesday, so we'll see how they do then, and if they play on Saturday, how that looks. And I'm going to kind of use this third point to kind of transition from the preseason game to like the public practice, but I want to talk about Darius Cooper, who seems to be the new flavor of the week at receiver, but I think this one really seems to have sticking power. Darius Cooper was an undrafted receiver out of Tarleton State. He's somebody that has a very interesting kind of build. He's not a super big receiver. He's 5'11". He's not super fast. Whatever you do not look up his pro day time as at Tarleton State. It's just throw it out. Don't even look at it. Don't bother. It doesn't really fit what I see in him. And, you know, Thursday was the first time we got to see him. He led the team in receiving, 6 for 82. And he seemed to be kind of a go-to guy for Tanner McKee. On a lot of those third downs, he kind of made a lot of those quick clutch catches. He's a pretty smooth route runner, a very savvy receiver. He's not necessarily someone that I would say is like, he's not like a fast guy, he's not a big guy, he's kind of just like a savvy little route running type of guy. I don't really have a comp for him. There are things he does that are almost AJ-like, which he has mentioned AJ is his favorite receiver, and he likes to model the game after him. He tries to talk to AJ about stuff, but I wouldn't say that like he himself is AJ. Right? Like, he's a much smaller receiver compared to AJ or anything like that. Like, it's actually kind of fun to watch him. And a lot of people have been wondering, you know, can he make this team? Can he be maybe wide receiver 6 or 5 or whatever the number may be? And initially I was concerned because, you know, he wasn't really playing special teams, you know, at practice. But then, you know, in the game, he was, I believe he got gunner reps during the game. At the public practice, he was a returner. And that bodes very well for him, and I've not heard enough people talk about this. When you're getting reps on special teams as a receiver, and they're bringing that up as a thing you can do, and you're getting first team reps at the same time, that means that the team wants to keep you. They're trying to determine your value beyond just being a receiver. There are a lot of guys on this roster that can play wide receiver. Not all of them can play special teams. And if they can figure out what he can do and can't do, if he provides value beyond just simply being a receiver, I think they will fight to keep him on this roster. Because I think he definitely deserves the spot. So I was very impressed by what I saw from him. Didn't see a ton of him at the practice. He's a pretty solid receiver. I'm curious to see more of him, hopefully on Saturday. So, going back to the public practice, I titled the game, you know, I titled the video, "The Defense Dominated," and that's exactly how I would describe it. It was a weaker day for the offense, but 3 players in particular really stood out at the practice, and it's fun because they're all on 3 different levels of the defense. Moro Ojimo, it just felt like he was constantly in the backfield, constantly harassing Jalen. And now, granted, it's hard to tell sometimes who's who, because you can't really see the numbers super well, because they're kind of the same color as the jersey, so it's hard to read who's who. But Moro was constantly someone I saw getting pressure. I thought he had a very disruptive day. I believe he had at least 1 sack during the public practice. They were blitzing the linebackers a lot, and Jahad Campbell was another guy who stood out, got constant pressure. And the third guy who stood out, Quinyon Mitchell, was pretty much just shadowing Devontae Smith all practice, and Devontae really didn't get much going. He had the big touchdown, but that was against Cooper DeJean. Against Quinyon Mitchell, he maybe had 2 catches in my opinion. Maybe 2, maybe 1. But it wasn't for a ton of yards or anything like that. Like, he's playing with a degree of confidence that he didn't even play with last year. And it's weird to say that. Like, he just feels more confident. Like, he's definitely out of his shell a lot more. He never had an issue with confidence. He's just playing... He's giving the CV1 vibe to me. And I feel that watching him. Jihad Campbell's a menace. Moro Jomo's a menace. He reminds me so much of 2021 Javon Hargrave. And I just think, like, man, if you have that next to Jalen Carter, I don't know what offensive lines are going to do. It's going to be tough to deal with that. But of course, practice ended on a sour note with the Landon Dickerson injury, and all day Monday we were all worried, and we got the good news that he's going to get a minor procedure, and hopefully he's back for week 1. I was the person who shared the injury on Twitter. I showed the video of it, and it went viral. I didn't want to include it in the practice video, because I didn't really think it needed more attention than it already got, and the play was just a check down to Saquon anyway. Thankfully, Landon avoided more serious injury, but hopefully he is healthy by week 1. You know, you gotta have to just cross your fingers there. We'll see what happens with him, who could play for him in his spot if he isn't healthy. I mean, the big thing for me about the injury is the Eagles are kind of becoming one of those teams where September doesn't matter as much. Like last year, the Eagles were 2-2 and the world was falling off, and then they win the Super Bowl the same season. So it's like, it feels like two completely different teams. And what I mean by that is, when you're as good as the Eagles, it's not a matter of if you'll make the playoffs, it's where you're going to be placed. And you have to do your job in the regular season to get the best placement possible. But then, once you're in the dance, then everything else kind of like, their placement doesn't matter. It's just about winning and getting as many wins as possible and getting back to the Super Bowl. So, I kind of don't care. Like, I'm not overly concerned. Like, if Landon has to miss that game against Dallas, even if we lose that game, in theory, solely because Landon missed, I wouldn't be overly concerned about it because it's still a full season. We know this team is good enough to make the playoffs. It's just a matter of what happens when they get there, and as long as they're healthy at that point, I don't care. The Eagles played 3 games last year with the entire starting offense healthy, and that did not matter. They still won 14 games. So we'll see what happens this year with a tougher schedule. Anyway, this is Bird Brain. Hope you guys enjoyed this video today. Fly Eagles fly, and see you around.